And now we're being joined by Marcin Krzyżanowski. Good evening, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Good evening. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay. Well, let me ask you, because we just found out that you're in Iran at the moment. So before we discuss Palestine, let me ask you about Raisi's funeral. People who showed up, right? Important officials from Saudi Arabia, Russia, among other places, also Egypt after years of absence. So what are the key takeaways from this gathering?
The main takeaways are that Iran is not an isolated country, and since last few years it increased its diplomatic power in the region, and was able to end ongoing conflict, to end decades-old conflicts. For example, with Saudi Arabia, it was also able to get closer to Egypt and to create a different environment in relation with other countries.
Right, so I mean, lots of important shifts could be taking place in the near future, right? I think we have to keep our eyes on Iran, but of course, Raisi wasn't as important as Khamenei is, so perhaps that's another argument. But let's move to the topic of Palestine, right? Norway, Ireland, and Sweden saying that Spain saying that Spain saying that they will recognize Palestine as a state on May 28th officially. An angry reaction from Israel, recalling of its envoys from these countries. Also, a response from Bezalel Smotrich, who said that he will not send the tax revenue to Norway, the Palestinian tax revenue. So you know, lots of things are happening. What is your take on that?
The so-called Palestinian case is getting more attention in the world's public opinion. Till quite recently, the Palestinian case, the issue of creation of Palestinian state, wasn't on the agenda of major powers, and especially Western countries at the moment, due to the ongoing conflict, or as some may say, civil war in Palestine and Israel. The issue of a so-called two-state solution for the Arab-Israeli, Palestinian-Israeli conflict is again on the table. And more experts, more and more politicians are saying that the only solution, only viable solution, only possibility to end the war is two-state solution, as was, generally speaking, planned by the ONZ, the United Nations Organization, in 1947. But the issue which still remains is the issue of border of so-called Palestinian state and authority of the Palestinian state. At the moment, Palestine consists of two separate territories. One is ruled by Mahmoud Abbas, and second is ruled by Hamas, and more occupied by Israel.
Right, and on that note, I mean, representatives from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, and UAE will meet with the representatives from 27 EU member states on Monday to discuss that precise issue, a two-state solution, perhaps ending the conflict in Gaza. But I mean, honestly, I mean, these talks so far were not very fruitful.
Well, indeed, and I think also this is now the tricky question. I mean, we have, I think, if we look at the statistics, 143 nations around the world that actually recognize Palestine as a state. Now, this is only nations that can do this. Now we have several more joining. But let's focus in on some of those that are not recognizing Palestine at this point in time. Still major players in the world, including the United States, including Canada, Italy, Germany, France, Japan, Australia. And I think effectively as well, what we've heard, I mean, angry statements by the Israeli side today mentioned, but at the same time, we've also heard that some of these major nations, including the U.S., will not support a two-state solution unless it involves the approval, essentially, of Israel in that process. I mean, does that not essentially just give Israel a veto to this?
Definitely, yes. I mean, frankly speaking, as long as the United States will not recognize the Palestine will not be effectively recognized as a country. United States still is the major power in the world, and still is holding maybe not all but most of keys to the solution for the conflict. If the United States will give a green light for the Palestine and independence, for sure, next countries, as I mentioned before, Canada, Germany, and other Western powers will follow that step. As long as the United States opposed the creation of independent Palestine state, there will be no chance for the real Palestine state.
Yeah, and if I may, just on a follow-up on that, I think it's also interesting Norway as well has come forward to this. I mean, remember the Oslo Accords of 1993, really key. I mean, it set very much, it looked like finally there would be a two-state solution possible. I think according to those accords, it was supposed to be, I think, 1999 that there should have been already a Palestinian state. Then I remember Camp David in the year 2000 where everything fell apart. Let's go on that just for a moment, because I mean, yes, recognition is important here, but if we go back to history in 2000, how much there, and it's a big question, Marcin, how much went wrong at Camp David that found us at this situation here where we have today?
The main problem, the main blow to the peace process started in Oslo, continued in Camp David, was assassination of the Israeli prime minister and following political chaos in Israel. Later on, we faced an increase of influence of religious radical minority in Israel, and at the moment that radicals are strongly opposing any ideas of the Palestinian independence are holding power in Israeli government and holding Premier Netanyahu almost as a political hostage, and also that's the biggest problem for the current situation. Looking back to history, the Oslo Accords and later Camp David Accords were implemented initially, but the illegal Jewish settlements in the West Bank of Jordan nominally belongs to terrain which nominally belongs to Palestine, blow up the process because the Israeli state was forced by its own society to defend those illegal settlers, and thus ended the peace process as the real thing. The peace process since then was only on the paper.
Right, and sort of, I wanted to ask you about the international community and the fact that the Palestine-Israel issue sort of continues to polarize the international sort of various countries, so to speak, but it also becomes a contentious issue within certain countries such as the US, right? I mean, some politicians were afraid or perhaps not willing to speak out on the issue of ICC ruling. I mean, the application for the arrest warrant, right? Because it's not an arrest warrant yet. The judge has applied for it to be issued, but responses were, all across the spectrum, right? From people like Biden saying that, of course, it's not a genocide what's happening in Gaza, to people like Bernie Sanders saying that we should respect international law. So I also wanted to ask you about this polarization on the international scene. What kind of trends are we seeing, and will this sort of continue to divide?
The war is always, with all its brutality, is always an issue to polarize the public opinion. As the public opinion is polarized, the politicians in democratic countries, as for example United States, will be affected by that. The conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians is quite long. It's dated from these more than 8 years of ongoing conflict with a few wars, and at the moment with possible genocide in the Gaza Strip. So people are angry. People are asking why the conflict will take so long. Why there is no peace at the moment? Why we shouldn't end it once and for all? And those are the results of such an approach. In my opinion, in the nearest future, the rift between, let's say, supporters of Israel and supporters of Palestinian state case will be even deeper and wider, and the polarization will grow stronger, which will be a very important issue during the presidential campaign, especially in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, and I think that's also going to be a really, really key focus point there, and we'll see already a very divided administration, a divided Democratic Party, and I'm sure that will play a bigger role in the elections. Look, we'll close it there. Thank you so much for those insights. Marcin Krzyżanowski there, and I think in Iran. So please stay safe. Good to have you on the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and have a good night.